Okay, so welcome to the next episode of the Path Less Chosen pod, the podcast showing you the careers they don't teach you about in school. I'm Jamie.
And I'm Sol.
So today's guest, we're going to refer to as Molly. For anonymity reasons, we can't say anything else, but she is a prison officer, and it's going to be a really interesting chat, I think. So what can we expect from today's conversation?
So many things. So one of the things is working out how to feel fulfilled in your career and absolutely love turning up every single day, despite not necessarily the most prestigious or money-loving career out there. You can expect unbelievable stories from inside a prison, and you can also expect an eye-opening reality in how to actually care and try and want better lives for people who have committed crimes and seeing criminals as human beings.
Sounds interesting. Certainly a varied career, but should be good. So let's get her on. Okay, Molly, great to have you on the podcast. So just to begin with, let's get into a little bit about what exactly it is you do.
Okay, I'm a prison officer and have been for 2 years, and I've been doing the Unlocked grad scheme, which is basically like a master's that you do alongside it in applied custodial leadership. So I've nearly finished that, just finishing off a dissertation now. But yeah, prison officer.
Amazing, and definitely a career that we haven't had or know many people doing. So specifically within the prison officer part, you work with the psychiatry, right? Or the... No,
I used to, yeah.
Okay.
So I worked for a year on the enhanced support unit, which is for lads with like extra needs, like autism or ADHD or any form of like mental health needs. So we'd get boys who were severely self-harming and suicidal, but we'd also get boys who just needed extra communication because they couldn't really understand and cope as well on a residential unit with a lot of other offenders.
Wow. Okay, so just to give us a bit of context then, exactly when you say a prison officer, what exactly does that mean? And tell us as much as you can about the situation or the context. You say lads, are we talking about younger prisoners here? What's the situation?
Yeah, so young offenders, 15 to 17/18-year-olds. And prison officer, it literally encompasses about 20 different jobs where counsellors, like firefighters, mental health first aiders, normal first aiders. I feel like sometimes I'm a PA for teenage criminals. Like, honestly, you name it. That is part of my job. There is a lot that the prison officer encompasses. Day to day, it is like sorting out regimes, making sure all of the lads get what they need, sorting out appointments that they might need. Especially on the enhanced support unit, it was a lot of psychology coming to talk to you about a boy, loads of paperwork involved, obviously. But yeah, it's a big mixture of stuff. It also depends, like the first thing in the morning you'll go in and see where you're detailed, which is like kind of a rota, and you'll look and it might say that you're in education in the morning, so that'll mean that you're facilitating education, and it could say you're on visits, so you go help out there, or you could be on your unit where you're doing exercise, showers, meetings, all of that.
Amazing. And so, okay, so a day looks very varied. It's very hard to kind of deal with that. What are some of the kind of consistents that you're like, okay, this is a part of my job that I do every day and that is like a routine aspect of it?
Like if you are on the unit, then you wake all of them up, like open the door, good morning, like give them their breakfast, let them know if they've got exercise or what they're doing that day. If you're on the desk, then you're like organising everything, so you're in charge of the unit that day, which I think other prisons might do it as like senior officers, so SOs, supervising officers. They might be the ones that are behind the desk, but in my prison, sort of anyone, it generally tends to be like the more experienced member of staff or someone that's going to be in all day rather than someone that's on an early shift or whatever. And so if you're on the desk, you're organising everything. If you're not, then you'll be going out on the exercise yard with the boys, just chatting to them, that sort of a thing. Like, I'd say meal times are the most definitely structured because they happen at the same time every day. Because that's when the roll check happens, so that's just counting up everyone, making sure everyone's there and okay, sort of a thing. But apart from that, there isn't really anything that's particularly clear or the same every day.
I guess the one thing that I'm so interested in, that is, I guess the thing that doesn't change, is the fact that your kind of main clients or people you work with are the kind of the prisoners, right? How is interacting with prisoners on a daily basis? How is that?
I think when I first started, It's really hard to see prisoners as literally just human beings who have done something wrong. I think when you call them prisoners, it kind of puts them as a us and them sort of a thing, and it dehumanises them a lot. And that's what I find a lot of people who haven't worked in the prison service or don't really know much about it will kind of just see them as not human because they're locked up and their rights are taken away from them. I think, yeah, it was kind of like, first day I came in, I was like, oh my God, how do I even speak to them? And you realise these are kids. Like, I'm working with children. I speak to them like they are a 17-year-old boy. And you do just talk normally, and it becomes such a normal thing that you're just chatting with someone who's done, you know, maybe a really, really bad crime, maybe one that's actually quite minor in the grand scheme of things. You do just chat to them as normal people, I guess. Like, they watch Love Island during summer. You'll chat about that. Like, I guess the Olympics are on now, so did you watch, like, Simone Biles? You know, you just have normal conversations, because at the end of the day, also, like, these are really vulnerable people, and they are, the majority of them are the most vulnerable people in society anyway, before they did a crime, and they're kids. So it's just, like, trying to make them feel at ease, I guess, a lot of the time, and just talking to them like they are normal people definitely helps that.
Interesting. And I know you can't necessarily talk about the, like, specific crimes, but are we talking serious crimes? Like, is it really hard for you to sometimes disassociate the people with the crimes they committed, or is it a massive varied mix?
Weirdly, I thought that would be harder. I thought it would be harder to not think about the crimes that people commit. And actually, I do find it easier than I expected. Like, yeah, like you said, I can't talk about what they've done, and even just mentioning, like, so it's still, I can't really say that, but, like, yes, there are serious crimes, you know, ones that adult males also do. Like, they are in for a big range of different offences. Yeah, they might come in for an offence that I do find abhorrent, obviously, but once you start talking to them about other stuff, you do have to just put it to the back of your mind, because otherwise you're not going to treat them fairly. Like, you will treat them different to other people who say are in for a lesser crime, like theft or something. But you can't. It would make my life a lot harder if I thought about what people have done, and it's not fair. Like, the punishment, I'm not giving them a punishment, I'm facilitating it. So if I let my thoughts and feelings about what some people have done dictate how I treat them, that's not fair, because that's not what I'm there to do.
Yeah, like, I understand obviously the position you're coming from. I guess it gets complicated sometimes, and there must be, like, some blurred lines. So I'm interested, like, just to push on the whole relationship side of things. How do you, like, see, and how are you supposed to see your relationship with these guys? Are you supposed to be their friend? Are you supposed to be more of, like, a motherly figure?
So when I was training, they kind of had this motto they would always say, which was friendly but not friends. And so I am not there to be their friend, because that can, you know, complicate things, and it can end up leading to corruption and stuff. I'm sure you've read in the news about the woman in Wandsworth. You know, it is a strictly professional relationship. It's a working relationship, but you also are there as a person who is hopefully quite, and you are there to support them and help these lads. You're not there to be, like, ruling with an iron fist sort of a thing, which is, I guess, what, like, maybe older prison officers used to do, but it's not really like that anymore. Yeah, it is that friendly, not friends. Like, you are going to joke about with them, have a laugh, like, chat, catch up if you haven't been in for a bit, but you aren't their mate. It has to be professional. Because also, at the end of the day, we do have to restrain people, and if you've become too close with a prisoner and they're being violent, you might be less likely to actually get involved in a restraint and squash it, and it could become more dangerous. So there are a lot of risks with not keeping it professional.
Yeah, and how do you go about keeping those boundaries? Because I can imagine, obviously, it makes sense to see them as people, and that's such a nice mindset and thought to have about them. But then how do you see them as people, but then still remind yourself that they are people who have done bad things and are capable of potentially, as you were saying there, being violent and needing to be restrained? How the hell do you laugh and joke, but at the same time have that boundary?
You don't really let your guard down as a prison officer, and I think that's why it is such a stressful job, because you can't relax, because you don't know what's going to happen, you don't know what's going on. And as much as, like, our security departments are great and they do great things, you can't predict everything, you can't predict every incident. So like, I guess it is just about always having your wits about you and not letting your guard down too much, and you don't. Like it's very emotionally draining working in a prison because you can't relax at any point. You have to always be able to see everything, know what's going on, and react quickly and properly to everything. It's not the physical threat. It's well, for me it's not. I would say like the emotional baggage that comes with being a prison officer has been way worse for me than any of the like violent incidents I've obviously had to be involved in. I've had my back and ribs kicked in and haven't been able to walk for a couple of weeks. That is nothing compared to the amount of stress and upset that I felt from the pressure of being a prison officer and the pressure of getting everything right. It's a lot, and I think working on the enhanced support unit with boys who are particularly challenging to work with and who do need a lot of support and care, that was really hard. That I don't work on that unit anymore. And as much as it was such a valuable experience, I learned so much and it made me such a better officer for it. The amount of pressure you get from a small group of boys is way worse than, on another unit, which I have worked on. I haven't only worked on that, so I do have ability to compare. But yeah, the violent incidents, they're not fun. They are difficult and no one enjoys dealing with them. But I would say the constant emotional pressure and stress was a lot worse than dealing with that.
Yeah. And then what about the positive side of things? Is there a lot of positive, emotional reward that you get out of it? Do you feel like you're having a positive impact on their lives as well?
I don't know if I am. To be honest, I went into the job wanting to change the world and, rehabilitate a load of people and make their lives so much better. Obviously, it's such an unrealistic expectation. I've kind of lowered that to, if I can make their day better, then that's great. If I can just make them have a nicer day because I'm a nice officer and stuff, then great. I feel like I've done a good job then. That's the more rewarding bit, is just sitting down having a fun conversation or playing a game of cards outside in the exercise yard, and I know that they've had a nice hour out of their room.
Love that.
I find that absolutely fascinating because I think first of all the sentiment that you're went in with trying to change the world and then you've kind of been dulled down. I feel like that's such a classic thing that people who are going into those sort of rehabilitation jobs say. But at the same time, the fact that you then go and say your aim is just to make their day a little better, to me that is a crazy mentality to have as working in a prison. Why do you think you've got to that point where you feel like you want to make their day better?
I think because everything does change day to day in the prison service. Like I said, no day is the same as the next. So I think because it's such a day by day job and you don't know what's going to happen, you come into work and you could be going to the hospital 3 hours later, you could come into work and have the most chill day ever. You don't know. And I think it's because you don't know what to expect out of your day that it is if I do have a good day with one of the lads, then that's great. I think that's why, because it is just so day by day, you don't know what to expect. And I think to try and expect that I'm going to change the next 3 weeks of someone's life is completely unrealistic when I don't know what the next day is even going to hold.
Just a quick introduction from me. We hope you're enjoying the episode so far. Just want to ask one big favour. That if you're not doing so already, whether you're on Apple Music or Spotify, if you could just click the subscribe button, that would be massively helpful for us in terms of getting this to a bigger audience. We want to make sure that as many people as possible can hear about the cool careers our guests are doing, and maybe we'll inspire them to do something similar. So if you click that subscribe, it helps us to do that. Thank you. Back to the episode.
Amazing. That makes complete sense. Would you be able to share any stories that give a bit of an insight into how hectic the day is?
We did have one day that was just bonkers. One thing after another happened, and we had one incident on one unit that was only contained to one unit, so it was kind of fine, and that was sorted out sort of by lunchtime. And I was on an A shift, so I'll explain shifts a bit more later, but an A shift is a 13-hour shift. You're in from 7 till 8:30, basically 13 hours. So it's long. And that day of all days, of course, I was on an A shift where everything possible happened. And so the roll was called late because there was an ongoing incident during lunch. So no one really got their lunch break. No one could go outside. Anyone that smokes couldn't go and have a nicotine break. Obviously, people then get a bit angsty and stressed and all of that. So anyway, I was involved in that incident that was dealt with. Then in the afternoon, I can't really say what it is, but then in the afternoon, a huge incident happened, which involved literally every officer to have to go to it and help out because there were 30 or 40 odd boys involved in this incident, and it takes 3 people to properly restrain someone, most likely more if they're being particularly volatile. So 30 or 40 boys, 3 each. It was carnage, just carnage. And so it ended up in like full staff assistance, where every single officer that was available had to run, but there has to be one officer that stays on every unit in case there's like, you know, a fire or someone stops breathing, or like we have to check on their acts, which is a document for suicide and self-harm, and they're like hourly or like 4 an hour, 3 an hour, whatever. We have to check on them. So there has to be one person on the unit at all times. So everyone had run off to this incident that was going on and on and on. More same location. It feeling like people like yelling through the radio, staff assistants, like help, literally anything. They were just yelling so that people would come. So we put all of our lads away and all of the other people on the unit ran off. And funnily enough, I was the only girl that was working on the unit, and all of the male members of staff said, if you stay here, we'll go to the alarm. I was like, so I stayed. So I was just doing the acts, like chatting to the lads while they were behind their doors, sitting doing some paperwork, you know. And I could hear all of this going on through the like radio. And I just sat there feeling like shit, because I was at like 11 when I could hear my friends shouting on the radio, getting like attacked and beaten up, and I don't know what's going on. Anyway, that situation got resolved after a while, but it was really bad. At least 17 staff left the prison injured. Loads of boys were injured. One lad was in 2 sets of handcuffs because he was so like resistant to the restraint. It was absolute carnage. Anyway, so loads of people have gone home, whatever, and then it gets to the evening, and the evening shift is normally very quiet. You normally have like one person on each unit, and then like a couple of others who are taking lads maybe to the gym, maybe to whatever, but obviously nothing was going on in the prison that evening. But it was just before 5:30, and that's when you put the roll in for the evening count. And one of our lads tries to go at height, which is kind of like a protest, like they're pissed off about something, they'll climb over the railings, you can't touch them while they're on the railings because you might push them over, or they might like pretend that you push them over. It's like the whole thing. So he was over one side of the railings, and he tried to go over one side of the railings, like sprinting up the stairs, go and stop him. Another officer's come with me, who'd already like injured himself earlier in the huge, massive thing. And we grab him. I've got his arm, like putting my full body weight against him, and so is the other officer with me. And we kind of managed to get him, but we had to press the alarm bell. Anyway, one thing led to another. They're trying to get him down the stairs. I've been swapped out of the restraint now because the big like MMPR lads, they're all like huge bulldozers, and they all come in and they're all amazing at like restraining and stuff, and they're our trainers. They came in and we were like walking him down the stairs, and someone tripped over, and we hear a big crack, and the lad in question has broken his arm during a restraint. So then obviously I'm the only person, like a member of staff who works on the enhanced support unit. I'm the only one that knows him well, knows him every day. So I have to stay and take him to hospital. And this boy is so volatile and so difficult that he has to go out with 4 people on an escort. A normal person would probably go out with 2 officers, but he needed 4. So it was me, a CM, which is like 2 ranks above me, it's a line manager, that sort of a thing, and an SO, 1 above me, and another officer. And I was literally there, I was like, I've been in since 10 a.m. and now I've got to go out on this escort. And I was like, fine, but just take me over to details tomorrow. I'm telling you, I'm not coming in now. 4 prison officers sat with this one guy. Obviously everyone in A&E is like, what the hell is going on? Like, why are there 4 officers here with one boy who looks traumatised and doesn't look like he's going to have a fly? And that took ages, and then we ended up getting out and getting back to the prison at about 3 a.m.
Wow.
So in terms of like a bad day that doesn't go to plan, that's probably the main.
I think you've summed that up amazingly.
Yeah.
Sorry, very long way.
No, it's a really brilliant insight, because I think most people listening to this would probably hear that you work inside a prison, and immediately their minds would jump to the impression that they get of prisons from like movies. I don't think like the general public really has an insight into what it's like being inside these places. So just to hear like the stuff you're getting up to, I guess that's probably the less glamorous side of it, but a hectic, like wild day that like all this drama's happening in one day. That was fascinating. But one thing I picked up on that you mentioned in there is the fact that when you were the one woman on duty, you were left behind. And I think probably for like transparency for anyone listening that might think this could be a career they want to go into, is there like something to be said for the fact that it's actually difficult to be in this career as a woman?
Yeah, I mean, also I'm a young woman as well, which doesn't help. Like, you generally tend to get a bit more respect if you're like a little bit older, but being young, it doesn't help. And it's got better. And in my prison, there are a lot of like really strong women, physically, mentally, and they are sick, and people know they're sick. But when I first started, especially, it was very like, get off the restraint, I'm going to get in. Like, I've literally been pushed off of a restraint by a male member of staff before. And when I questioned him like afterwards, I was like, why did you do that? He was like, oh, well, I'm stronger. And restraining isn't actually about strength, it's about technique. Like, yeah, having a lot of strength definitely helps sometimes when you've got a particularly difficult lad. But generally, it's about your like technique and how you're holding them and stuff like that. It's not really necessary to have brute strength. And it is very infuriating when it's assumed that because you're a girl you're not going to be that good, or because I'm 5'4" I can't reach his head. I've restrained lads that are 6'4", and I've been fine. Like, and it's just it is infuriating, but I would say that it is getting better. So I don't think I don't think if I were recommending the job to people, that wouldn't be my first critique, if that makes sense.
And just on that, when you talk about recommending the job to people, I'm not sure if people will listen to this and go, this is the dream thing I want to get into. But at the same time, I think there's a few things like actually caring about the people and making people's day better that people might actually resonate quite a lot more than maybe we might appreciate. So if someone's listening to this and thinking that they want to get into it, how would you go?
It's not for the faint-hearted. Like, you can't be someone that lets the little stuff get to you to be in this line of work. You do need to be strong-willed and have thick skin. But I also think I've gained a lot of that as well in the last 2 years. Like, yeah, I didn't let like little stuff get to me as much before, but my God, I'm a lot more resilient now. As long as you don't think you're gonna cry over the small stuff, then I do think it's a really positive job, and I have grown so much as a human being doing it. And, you know, officer or not, I'm never leaving the prison service. I know I want to stay in it, come what may, whether it's a desk job or not. It like really affects you, and I think you either fall in love with it and want to stay in it, or you're like, get me out of here. I would say if people are thinking about doing it, as long as you think you have thick enough skin and you're ready to have to restrain people and deal with very like intense situations, it is an incredibly rewarding job, and I do love it.
Yeah. No, it's brilliant to hear you talk with like such passion about it, because even after you've just told us a story that sounds like the worst day ever, you're still talking, and clearly you love the fact that you are ultimately there to improve these guys' lives, and I think that comes across really well. And it was interesting to hear you say in there that you will never leave the prison service. Following on from that, how does the future look? Like, you mentioned it might be an office job, or do you like work up the ranks in the prison? How does it work in that?
Well, yeah, so you can work up the ranks.
Right.
So, like I said, I'm an officer, and then you have a senior officer, a custodial leader, custodial manager, a governor, and then like the governor, I suppose. So it is very, very militaristic in terms of ranking and stuff. But equally, it does have a lot of like fluidity in the job. Like, there are a lot of opportunities to move up, or even to move sideways. Like, you might enjoy being a band 3 or 4 officer, you really want the pressure of being a manager or whatever, and there are other things that you can do. You can go work in security, or save the custody, which is like safeguarding, or, you know, there's a lot of other routes you can take if you want to move around within the service. And in terms of like office jobs, I guess there's obviously like HQ, like working in policy, or, you know, in the youth custody service or whatever. There's a lot of other jobs that are still within HMPPS that aren't necessarily on the landings.
So interesting, yeah. One thing I'd love to know is that you clearly are pursuing a career which is going to be much harder in terms of physical and mental, like, pressure. It's probably not going to bring you loads of riches. What is it that really motivates you to keep going and absolutely love what you're doing?
Well, I never wanted a big corporate job with lots of money. Money was never a motivating factor for me anyway when I was applying to jobs at uni. I want to love my job. Your job is something that you do the majority of your time. You don't, you know, your job isn't a weekend. It's 5 days a week. It's a lot of time. Like, I don't want to work to live. I want to live to work. Like, you spend so much of your time, and we've got so many years until we retire or whatever. So I want to actually enjoy that and not be miserable for 5 days out of 7.
But it is mental to me that you say that, that you want to stay in. And I think it's amazing that you say that as well. Like, so inspiring to hear. But we do ask the same question to all of our guests. And that is, going back to the start, that can be whenever you want it to be. What is one thing you do the same? What is one thing you do differently? And what's one thing you tell yourself to motivate yourself?
Okay. I found what I do the same question the hardest, I think. I've got here, I've survived the 2 years. I've nearly finished the masters. So like in one way I do kind of everything the same because every experience has led me up to this. But in another I'd scream at myself and tell her to go and like take more time and rest and chill and don't go and do all of that overtime just for the money because you don't need it, sort of a thing. One's the hardest, I think. But what I do the
That's
same,
a good answer. I like that.
I guess I'd do the majority of it the same because I want to get to where I am today. But then what I do differently is give myself so much more time to like chill out and don't do that overtime. Don't stress yourself out more than you need to. It's a stressful job as it is. You don't need to add more to that. I tell myself the truth. Like, I have got here. I have done 2 years on the landings in a very volatile prison. I have passed all of my master's essays. Like, I would just say, like, I've done it, so you can do it. Just keep going. Like, there's no need to like give myself some big cat talk or anything. It is literally like, you've done it, you've done 2 years, you're awesome, keep going with it.
I absolutely love that. And Tilda,
that was everything we could have hoped for, to be honest. I think Sol and I were kind of like a bit confused like where to take the conversation because it's such a crazy job and like you're living in such a scary world. But actually all of the insights you've given us and the fact that you talk about it with so much passion and you clearly love it and you're doing it for the right reasons, like for good human reasons, I think it was fantastic. So thank you so much for coming on, and it was brilliant.
Thank you so much for having me.
That was obviously unbelievable, and it was good to chat and hear about something that honestly I have no idea about. And as you said in the pod, the films over glamorise so much, the realities of the job so much different. But if we go into our takeaways now, if you're okay with me going first, I think, and I'm sure you're going to have written this down as well, but the first thing that I think is so key and is a theme with so many of our guests is just a genuine passion and a purpose within your job. Like she mentioned, she basically spent 70-80% of the podcast saying pretty negative things about things she has to do all day, every day, and then turned around and said, but I absolutely love it and I want to spend the rest of my life working in it. And I think that's so interesting. The amount of people you hear, like nurses, doctors, policemen, firemen, like who are really doing a job that is not very sexy, but they absolutely love what they're doing. And I think that's my biggest takeaway is find what you love doing first and don't attach prestige or money to it. I don't know if you concur.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And even though you've just offended a load of firemen and police officers, I think the way she spoke about it is fantastic in that she's clearly only doing it because her motivation is like she wants to feel rewarded in her job. And I think that's a good way of listening to it. It probably links into my second point, which actually kind of resonated from what she was saying. But she spoke about how, having done the last 2 years in this world, she feels that she has improved and bettered herself as a human so much. And I think we haven't really spoken to many guests who have come on and said, yes, I've improved and achieved stuff in my career, but no one's come on and said to us, yeah, I've improved myself as a human being. And I think that also linked into what she said at the end, that if you are going to spend most of your time working and you want to go for the actual, I want to live to work, then at least do it in a career where you're going to make yourself better as a human being. And I love the fact that rather than doing any kind of introspection as to, in the last 2 years, I've earned X amount of money, I've done X amount of things to achieve success, what she's done is become a better human. And I thought that was a very positive way of looking at her career.
Yeah, I don't think I have anything to add on that. I think you summed that up nicely. And then do you have a third one?
Yeah, I think the third one, I quite like that she said right at the beginning that she's found so much reward in this career because she actually gets to make the lives of others better. And she said she went in probably naively at the start, thinking, I'm going to come in and change the world. But actually, she reevaluated that, set herself smaller goals, which means every day she's turned up to work, she feels like she's achieving something, because the rewarding part of setting those small goals is making the lives of each prisoner better every day just by being a nice person to them. And it's such a human career. Like, it's all about what she's like as a personality. And I think the balance between my second and third takeaway, where one, she's improving herself as a human being, but 2, she's improving the lives of others. And like, why would you not want to work in a career where you can do that?
No, I completely agree with that. And I think it's very clear that she's found a career that not only, as you said, benefits herself, but she's found a career where she's actually making a really positive impact on the world. I think really interestingly, all 3 of our takeaways are like linked in some way, which is love what you do. You'll develop yourself as a good person, and also you're making the world a better place. And to me, that seems like a pretty good little 3-part checklist to any good career that is going to leave someone feeling like they're doing something.
Yeah, no, fantastic. It was a really enjoyable one. I'm looking forward to listening to that back. I think she offers a very unique perspective on what is definitely a path less chosen. So good one to have on, and I'm looking forward to the next one. Hopefully lives up to the same standard. Congratulations to reaching it to the end of the episode. We really appreciate you getting this far. And now that you're here, we just want to ask one big favour. So we know you probably had a few conversations with your friends where they tell you about how much they hate their job. So what we'd ask is that if a friend like that comes to mind, that you click on the share button on whatever platform you're listening on and just send it to that friend. And just make sure that they're able to hear this, and perhaps it will inspire them to do a career that they actually will end up enjoying. And we'd really appreciate that, as it helps us grow the pod.